Brothers and sisters, on this very historic day, thankfully I had the grace to attend the funeral of Pope Benedict and to celebrate near the altar. And I very much remembered all of you in my prayers on this day, and can't help but reflect about this great man. And he's very dear to me because when I had my conversion and I came back to my faith, he was the first one. He was Pope at the time, and I turned to his readings and his work in a special way to guide me. And so in many ways he gave me tools very early on in my journey to search for the face of Christ. And this is one of the motifs in my own life that I borrowed or learned from him. I think it's a great motif over his whole life and his whole spiritual life, that throughout his whole life, he was in search for the face of God. It was the face of God that he was completely and utterly in love with. And amidst the uncertainties of the time in theology and in the world and in the secular wars against faith, he constantly pursued to make clear, not only to himself, but to communicate with intelligibility, with great faith, the true face of Jesus Christ of Nazareth. See, there are many false Christs out there, personal inventions of Christ. A Christ who is not faithful in image to the tradition of the church, to the Christ of the Gospels. And so Pope Benedict, seeing this great confusion in it and experiencing it in his own journey, in his different theological faculties he was in, seeing the state of Europe and the world, wanted to commit himself to finding this true face of Christ, true face of God, to be able to communicate that to the world. And I think he did this successfully. And in his book, Jesus of Nazareth, the trilogy, the 3 great books which I highly recommend that you read, is a testament of this personal search of this great man, this towering intellectual figure in the life of the church, not only of our times, but in the whole history of the church. A truly brilliant man, humble man, pursuing the face of God. And not only pursuing it alone, but trying to bring us on that journey, that interior journey, to communicate something to us of the truth, of the light, of that countenance of the face of Christ that shines bright in the light of the church. And so his search for the face of God in Jesus Christ, I think, is one of the greatest legacies he's leaving us, amidst all his theological debates and all the things he got involved with. He was at Vatican II, and he was thoroughly involved in that council, as Pope St. John Paul was. And so the two of them were these great popes who really understood the council and tried to implement it. Pope Benedict can teach us many things. He is a huge witness to the Eucharist as well. I mean, he spoke so much in his pontificate about Eucharistic adoration, the importance of adoring Christ, so therefore to be able to receive him worthily in Holy Communion, to have the right dispositions of heart. And he understood eating the Eucharist, not only just in the real communion, but also in spiritual communion, in Eucharistic adoration. He's really a great master of the life of prayer, which touches on themes that we want to speak about here in Heart Reach and in the Dominican House of Prayer. He is a guide of the interior life par excellence. And I want to draw your attention to his whole long series of catechesis on prayer, which you could look up online in the Wednesday audiences. Those same audiences that Pope John Paul delivered his own theology of the body in. But it was in this great catechesis of prayer. I want to turn now to the first catechesis of prayer, where, he's quoting some ancient prayers of Near East religions and pagan cultures to show the general search in the human heart to pray. And these prayers are genuine prayers from hearts who didn't even know Christ, or didn't know the fullness of who God was, but still search for God. And he begins in this open way, and eventually, obviously, he moves from this search of the human heart in general to the answer, the fulfillment of the meaning of all prayer in the face of Christ and in God. And here are some excerpts. He says in Egypt, for example, there's this prayer, this ancient prayer from this man suffering blind, asking God for sight. And here's the prayer. My heart longs to see you, you who made me see the darkness. Create light for me so that I may see you. Bend your beloved face over me. Then he quotes another prayer from Mesopotamia. These religions which kind of had an arcane, paralyzing sense of their own guilt which predominated their consciousness. And here's a prayer from a bold man who has great hope in God. And he says, O God, who are indulgent even in the greatest sin, absolve me from my sin. Look, O Lord, at your tired servant, and blow your breeze upon him. Forgive him without delay. Alleviate your severe punishment. Freed from bonds, grant that I may breathe anew. Break my chains, loosen the fetters that bind me. Then he goes on to quote Plato, who records a prayer of his great teacher Socrates, who's one of the founders of Western thought. And here, at this point, shows how Greek prayers, moving more than just asking for divine favors, but a real turn in on oneself to really improve and better their relationship. And here's the prayer of Socrates. Grant to me that I may be made beautiful in my soul within, and that all external possessions be in harmony with my inner man. May I consider the wise man rich, and may I have such wealth as only the self-restrained man can bear or endure. So, these are just some prayers. Eventually, he will go on in these catechesis to speak about the ultimate revelation of what prayer is, and it's Christ who teaches us what true prayer is.